So this is me, just in case you weren't sure. Magneto Communications is our business. I've been a professional writer, a copywriter for over almost 20 years, and writing a whole variety of things: speeches, ads, brochures, web copy, direct mail, white papers for the various companies. This is obviously a highly doctored photo. This is the one before we got PowerPoint to it, and actually has a surprising resemblance to someone else you might know. It's amazing how these things make you think of our connections to other people. The first rule of presenting, of course, is to not take yourself too seriously. So hopefully you won't either. And maybe not too far from this guy. My point I want to make here is that this guy is obviously a bat pug, and he's got his utility belt, just like Batman has his utility belt. And with Batman, if he's chasing the Penguin or the Joker, he can get over a wall, under a wall, through a wall, just by using all these amazing tools in his utility belt. And for me, that's what a lot of writing is like. It's about arming yourself with the tools. It's about the convergence, the intersection of two things, that is having the tools and knowing the psychology. You combine those two and you can become a really powerful writer. At Magneto, we're doing much the same with our training, and that is we're combining the psychology of engagement from copywriting and applying it to modern business writing standards. So it really is all about trying to get that engagement going with your audience. Just so you know that I haven't been working at 7-Eleven for the last 20 years. These are some of our clients. But let's launch into it. Just to start the day, we're doing CPR, clear, persuasive presentations that will give you a better response, CPR. So firstly, let me just ask you a question. And the question is, are you doing PowerPoint for a live audience, or are you doing it as a Word document? So I'm just going to launch a little poll here and get you all to vote. Here we go, and go. Just please vote on that, thanks. Almost all voted. Few more to go. Is it to a live audience, or are you doing it as a Word document that people read in isolation later on? Okay, so let's just close that poll, and then I'll show you the results. So 53% are doing it to live audiences, 5% as a substitute, and 42% to both. So that gives me a good idea that at least almost all of you are doing your presentations to live audiences, and many of the tips today will be very much focused on helping you do a better job of that. Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's crack on. And this is what not to do. Have a look at that slide. So there's some lovely little tips in there. I love the stream of consciousness, and this is from a guy in Holland. So you know, if that's you, don't do that. I really thought that would be worth sharing with you. So we want to teach you how not to do that. Let's launch into clear, the clear part of our presentation. And the first thing to do with clarity is to make sure that you've got your objectives set. Start here. Plan this first and write it. You know, plan your presentation first and write later. Don't just launch in, as we see many people doing, is they just start writing and they haven't actually got a clear idea of where they're going. A clear purpose, writing it down, getting that clear, helps you make sure that you can clarify your thinking. It keeps you on topic. It makes your purpose clear to your reader nice and early. Making sure that then you can clearly state your big idea for your audience in your PowerPoint presentation and the implications of it happening or not happening, and you can clarify your key points. Once you've thought about your objective, then think about your strategy. How will you achieve that objective? Don't think you've got to do it the way everyone else at work has always done it, or the way even you've always done it. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and there are a variety of different ways that you can apply. You can adapt your presentations to make sure that you don't just get people thinking that they're seeing something that they've just seen before. And I'm going to give you some ideas today on how to do things differently to make sure that people sit up and take notice, and get you more impact with your presentations. So the first thing with clarity is, oh good, but actually this is just a dummy. That's not a real one. I just did it to show you that, of course, you need to be, I should be eating my own dog food here, prepared for the unexpected. All sorts of things went wrong today as I was just hooking up to the GoToTraining system. But you've got to be as prepared as possible to try to manage the technical glitches. They are inevitable in my experience. So yeah, just I guess the point of that also is do something different that the audience just doesn't expect. Do something different they don't expect, break the mold, and you get more likely to get attention. You're more likely to avoid this kind of thing going on for your readers. Even world leaders or ex-world leaders are not immune. That is one killer yawn. So you want to think, to avoid this, to make sure you're getting a nice, clear message, make sure you talk right up front about the relevance. Why should your audience care? I hope I don't have to sell you on why you should care. Obviously, you've got people sitting down to read to listen to your presentation. You want to get them quickly. If their brain starts to get the message that this is something they've heard before, or this isn't relevant to them, they will tune out. You will see their faces, you will think they're listening to you, but as a trainer of, I've been running corporate training courses for 7 years, it's not uncommon, of course, to see someone sitting there, they're looking at you, they're even nodding, and then you ask them a question and you'll just see the lights suddenly come on, they go, sorry? And they just weren't bloody listening. Not good. So make sure you hook them in, get them in with this element of why. Tell them what it's about, why they should care. Don't take ages to wind up with that. Cut to the chase. It's your audience's biggest question. I'm not sure if you've heard of Simon Sinek, but he's got a book called Start With Why. Start With Why. And if you want to check him out on a TED.com video, he's been incredibly popular, 15 million plus views. How great leaders inspire action. Start with why. It's the opposite to how many organizations will structure their communications. But start with why, start with that relevance for them first. I think Patrina's going to share a link to that with you shortly. When you're writing anything, whether it's a PowerPoint or whether it's a document, lead with their need. Lead with their need. This is such an important principle. If you've got someone sitting down in front of you, if you're talking face-to-face with them, if you're talking it through writing in a Word document, if you're talking in a PowerPoint presentation, if you lead with their need, you can't help but get their interest. You just can't help but get their interest. So it's a great way of drawing them in. Lead with their need. Another thing you want to be considering is to tell them the big news first. What is the big news? Don't have a lengthy preamble, sidling up to your main point over time. Really cut to the chase. What is this actually all about? Why should they care? It's back to that relevance thing again. And for each slide, that's for your whole presentation, but for each slide, cut to the most interesting stuff. Don't have 4 bullet points and have your most interesting one at the end. Try to get their attention with the most interesting one first. This principle of big news first is a big one in our training, especially in our professional writing course, Get It Right. If I was to walk into the room and say that there was a train derailment, that would be giving you the big news first. Your next likely reaction is probably where? And if I said, well, in Sydney, and your next reaction might be, when? This morning. And then you might say, were people hurt? Yes, 42 people were injured. And you'd be asking, this is basically big news first and backfilling with readers' likely reactions or questions. Backfilling with their reactions or questions. The opposite of that is unfortunately what plenty of people are doing when they're presenting, when they're writing, and that is they've got the big news last. You can't blame them really, because a lot of university training is structured around building your case, building your case, building your case, and then at the end you go, da-da, your recommendation, your conclusion. And that's fine in an academic setting because the expectations are different. They want to see how smart you are. They want to, make sure that you've covered all your ground properly. But in a business setting, people are so time poor these days. They've got an information avalanche. Someone described it as an infobesity epidemic. And to help get around that, you need to cut to the chase very often with the big news first. You'll notice that when I was asking those backfilling questions, where was it, when was it, how did it happen, how many people, that we were talking about the 5 W's and the H. The 5 W's and the H are a principle that journalists use when they're writing their stories, and it helps flesh out your story. So it's another way of making sure you've covered off all your points properly in your PowerPoint, is ask yourself the 5 W's and the H about your whole presentation: who, what, why, when, where, and how. That's the 5 W's and the H. Who, what, why, when, where, and how. And even for each point you're making: who, what, why, when, where, how. Just to make sure you've covered off all the likely questions that your reader is going to have. It's very hard sometimes when we're embroiled in the detail to make sure that we, to figure out what the big news is. So one nice little way of doing that is to imagine that your reader is in a lift, your viewer is in a lift, and if you're running towards that lift to share your content with them, then you want to be imagining that the lift door is closing. And if the lift door was closing, what would be the one thing out of all the things that you could say here, what's the one thing that you want to yell through those closing lift doors before your reader was gone? That thing is your big news. So try to cut to the chase with that. Lead with it as early as you possibly can. You have to sometimes give a bit of context, and that's fine, but some people's context is like this when really it could be like that, and some of those other questions could have been put later on. Okay, and then you want to be thinking about another option, which is telling a good story, which is kind of contradicting myself, really. Because big news first, while it's critical for a busy audience, telling a story in a presentation is really important to keep people engaged. So you have to pick and choose. Sometimes you need to go big news first, and other times you need to tell a story. The advantage of stories is that they're highly memorable. It's much easier after hearing a story to relate it to someone else. The points in the story are easy to remember as well. And they're engaging. It's just in our DNA that over thousands of years around campfires, we just love stories. You just have to look at how successful the mega millions of dollars that go through movie cinemas and movies, the movie industry. We do love stories, but you have to pick and choose and be judicious about when you tell a story and when you go for big news first. It's really based on your reader's interest in the topic and how much time they'll have. If you present a lot, it's valuable to spend some time brainstorming, collecting stories of your own. I've got a little collection of stories, and you think, oh God, I don't have any stories. And then if you start thinking about it, if you remind yourself every so often, you actually can pull up a story, and there's nothing better than actually one of your own stories. Audiences, just listen up. It's not secondhand, it's your story. A, that's easy for you to relate, and B, it's very authentic, and so people just really, really tune into that. So just some ideas on story. How do you tell a story? I like to call it story. The 3 S's of story. The essence of a story, the themes that we want in stories, just if you're taking notes, write this down. We want transformation. We want to know how someone or something changes over time, or can change, or has a problem and can change. That could be your company and how it's in the doldrums now, but it could change. The other aspect is redemption. We love to know how someone or something can be saved from death or failure, a figurative sort of a death. And so they're very engaging sort of themes to try to talk to and relate your content to. People are trying to discover the courage to hope, believe it or not, and to be fully alive. Many have given up hope on this, so revive their hope. Do them a favour. So the essence of a story, if you really boil it down to nuts and bolts, it's the situation. Outlining the situation. What is the current situation? What is the current situation for the hero? And the hero, of course, is hopefully going to be your audience. You're trying to put them into the story here. And then you want to be talking about some sort of snag. So that's the situation, but there is a problem. There is a problem. What is the problem that we need to address here? And then what is the solution? What's the answer to it? How are we going to address that problem? So that's a very, very simple way of looking at what a story is really all about. And a very, very simple way of telling a story with a PowerPoint at a very basic level is I could have shown you just that slide there now, only that slide, right up front, and said, well, it's about situation, then snag, then solution, talked about each of those points. but that would be boring because I'm giving you it all at once. Make it not like a smorgasbord, make it like a degustation. If I put on my French accent, it is a dégustation, I think. If you're French, I apologize for that terrible accent. So, meet it out. Just give them little bit by little bit. Let them absorb this bit first, and then another bit, and then another bit, and just take your reader along on this story. So this is about the idea of slide builds. If you tease them, hopefully they'll be begging for more. So then we want to think about uncluttering our slides. Uncluttering our slides. With the courses we run, we always ask for a writing sample from each participant, and we edit it. We have a professional writer go over that with a fine-tooth comb and edit it meticulously, at least a page or two of it anyway, if it's long. And we'll give them nitty-gritty feedback on what that person's doing right, what they're doing wrong, and why it's important. So edits plus comments in there. And often I see PowerPoint slides, and people very often present what's known in the book Presentation Zen as a slidument. It's a Word document that's just shoved up on a slide, and it's just so, readers get MEGO. You know what MEGO is, of course, if you've done my training, MEGO, it stands for My Eyes Glaze Over. You don't want to give them MEGO. Get rid of the clutter. Just like that slide we looked at before. Way too much content. Way too much. So some high-level sort of tips around PowerPoint. Remember that a slide should be a guide. It shouldn't be a Word document. A rule of thumb is 5 lines per slide and 8 words per line. How many lines are on this slide? There's 6 there, aren't there? And to me, that's actually looking a bit cluttered. So, I think that's kind of demonstrating the fact that probably 5 lines is a good maximum to have. Make sure you use bullets, not long sentences. Just giving them thoughts. Half white space is a good sort of a rule of thumb. Minimize everything. Don't go too heavy on PowerPoint effects, data on graphs, colors. Really try to narrow it down to the simplest possible way of presenting the information. And nice large fonts. Arial in 36, body in 24. That's what this actually is on the screen in front of you. Blue or black on white. When I first started running these courses 7 years ago, I thought, it'd look beautiful if I had a black background and white text. But what you sometimes find is you walk into a room and the PowerPoint projector is really dim, or it's got a burnt out bulb or half burnt out, and it just is really, the contrast is terrible. It's very, very hard to see on the screen. So I've learned that the black on the white is much easier to deliver. Okay. Great quote from Einstein. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. So if you're not explaining it simply, then that's a great cue that you need to go back and just try to figure out this concept, the content even better. Really simply. Think about metaphors to make it easy to understand. Simple ways of explaining things. Relating it to something your reader already knows and making them feel comfortable and reassured about that, and then taking them somewhere else that they don't know. The principle we talk about in our training is delete or dilute. If you don't delete all the extraneous stuff, the excess stuff, then you will be diluting your main message, your key messages. Delete or dilute. And it goes the same with a PowerPoint slide. The more stuff you have on there, you're diluting the things that really matter. They want to be just getting the idea by looking at your PowerPoint at the bullet point, and all the details should come from you, the speaker. From you. So don't put that stuff up there. Don't use it as a crutch to read all your notes. By all means, have some notes in the PowerPoint notes part that you can see in your presenter view, as I unfortunately showed you at the start of my presentation. You don't want to show your readers that. And so I've got a nice little example here of what not to do. Don't make your readers sit through something like that. This is, as I said, a slidument. It's a smorgasbord. It's not a degustation. People they'll either try to start reading it or listen to you, but it annoys people. It's too much for the brain. Much better, of course, to do something like this. Don't give them a smorgasbord, give them a degustation. And so I've kept my version coming up simple, just to show the principles, but even better to use a nice graphic or theme or template to add relevant graphics. To orient your audience, the main point is summarized at the top. Now they know from the start where you're going. They've got the context. This helps you avoid, recently I got a Harvard Business Review little tip from a guy who wrote a book called, what's it called? It's called, I think it's called Avoiding the Soft Yes. And this guy says, avoiding the soft yes, saving the ask for the end of a presentation increases your risk of getting a soft yes, this author says from his research. He says execs will get excited during a presentation, they'll be nodding vigorously and agreeing with it, but then they end up not committing resources to it. And I wonder if you've experienced that yourself. So you can avoid this, he says, by making a resource request clear early. And within the first 10 minutes, be specific and then walk them through the how and the why that they'll get it. And then you end your presentation by repeating your resource request. If you get verbal agreement from them, send a written summary to stakeholders to nail it down. If you've, also, if you've done our training, you might have heard me talk about Cialdini, C-I-A-L-D-I-N-I, and he's got a great book called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, that you should read. It's, I think, mandatory reading for anyone who's in business. And one of his 6 principles, liking, authority, reciprocation, commitment and consistency, social proof and scarcity, far too fast I know for you to write down, but that's okay. Like I said, we'll be sending a recording to you afterwards. And one of his is commitment and consistency. If you get someone to commit, they will be bound later on, they feel an inward pressure to remain consistent with what they said. So try to get them to commit in some way, verbally, yes, and then, having them agree to it in writing. So the next question after they see that we need PowerPoint training is why. So when I talk about in our about proposals in our pitching on paper presentation, that's webinar that's coming up in May. Some of you have obviously booked on that because there's quite a few people booked in already. I'll cover what are known as win themes. A win theme is something you can weave through your content so your audience can't help but remember the theme or the themes. And you can do something similar in PowerPoint. This point up here, we need PowerPoint training, isn't really a win theme. It's more like your big news. A win theme for something like this might be, if staff learn more, we'll earn more. And it's a catchier, you try to make it a bit of a catchier way of communicating that. So if we were to talk about this, this build, a slide build for not this, but a build for this one, then we might go something like this. PowerPoint is popular. Making the point, you're going from general to specifics. PowerPoint is popular. So talking in general, about why this is important. There are 350 PowerPoint presentations per second. That works out to 30 million a day, or 10.5 billion per year. And then you talk about the cost. Why would they care about that? What are the implications there? Well, the cost of that is that, let's say you had 30-minute presentations and you had to 4 people in each presentation on average who each earn about 50K, which is, I'm sure a lot of people are earning more than that. And then you would say, let's say conservatively that 1/4 of those presentations turned out to be a waste of time. Then you might say that the cost of bad PowerPoint is $140 billion a year. That's on a global scale, so you then try to make it specific to the business. The cost to us of death by PowerPoint. You talk about the specifics of your business, how many presentations about to how many people, what's the average wage in your business, and then you will say the cost of bad PowerPoint to us is maybe X million dollars per year. So I hope that gives you an idea of where you would go with that. And you might also add some more implications about the also lost sales, slower decisions, is slowing us down, all of that sort of thing. Okay. Just make sure no one's asking me questions here. I just realised I can't see. There we go. I'm just going to make Patrina an organiser. Let's see, where are you, young Patrina? And then she'll be able to talk to all of you. There we go. All right. Beautiful. Okay, team, let's crack on with persuasive. How do you make them persuasive? In the promo for this webinar, I talked about how about heart massage. And I'm not really talking about this sort of heart massage. It's more like this sort of heart massage. The specifics of trying to appeal to your reader's heart, not just their head, but their heart as well. Some of you, I know from experience, are sitting there going, what the heck's he talking about? Why would you be talking Why would you be talking about heart? Well, surely business is all about rational, the logical, the tangible. Is that true? Well, firstly, here is an organ alert. I'm about to show you a human brain. So if you don't want to see an actual human brain, then look away. Here it is. Your brain has two sides. It's got a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. Excuse me before I choke. Let's have a good drink. And while the researchers are a little bit divided about whether there is literally left brain or right brain, generally they agree that our left brain is more about tangible, rational, factual things, mathematics, sequence, language, things like that. And the right brain is more about emotion. It's more about the holistic view of things. It's music, it's art, it's creativity. All of that sort of stuff comes from the right brain. And when you're communicating to someone, if you only talk about the facts, then you're just talking to half their head. Emotions are a huge factor in presentations. This is what I call the whole brain approach to writing well. And that is the fact that we've got left brain and right brain, facts, rational, tangible, emotions, feelings, and instinct between left and right. Now, Rogan SI, a presentation company, do research year after year into the decision makers of multi-million-dollar bids. And here's what they find. Firstly, what do you think the guess would be? Do you think that for multi-million-dollar bids, that the percentage of the decisions, the amount of influence for the left brain versus right brain on these big, big decisions is more left brain or more right brain? Why don't you type it in chat? More left or more right for multi-million-dollar decisions? Oh, we've got a few people saying left, but a lot of people saying more right. And as it turns out, it's actually not only just more right, but it's quite a bit more right. It's 70-30. They keep finding that 70% of influence is based on the right brain things and 30% on the left. And this is because emotion has the, not because, but I like to think of it, that emotion has the word motion in it. Emotions move us. They move us. If you're not convincing someone with your facts, yes, maybe give them more or different facts, but don't keep laying on fact after fact after fact. There may be something else at work you need to play on. And considering how your reader feels about something is a smart thing to consider. So now I'm going to talk about how to tie that into your presentation. So get on your bike. On your bike. If you're listening in from overseas, this is a lovely Australianism. On your bike means get out of here. But I'd like you to think about it in terms of this sort of bike. This is what I call Aristotle's persuasion's tricycle. The persuasion tricycle has three elements, three wheels to it. The first wheel is ethos. It's Aristotle 2,500 years ago revered as one of the great communicators of all time, an amazing orator, an amazing arguer, if you like, in the public forums. And Aristotle said there were three fundamental things you had to play to if you want to convince anyone of anything. Ethos was the first one. Character and reputation. It's the person speaking. It's what you know about them. It's how much you trust them. The second thing is logos. Logos is the logic and the argument. Of course, this is all the left brain stuff. Logos is all left brain. It's the facts, the rational, the tangible things. But it's only a third of the actual equation. And then you want to think about pathos. I'm just going to take myself off screen a little bit just to let you focus in on that. Okay. And so pathos is all about your building emotion. It's all about building emotion for your reader, and it's about your self-belief. When I've done sales training in the past, it's very much, and when I've worked as a salesperson, very much your self-belief. If you don't believe in the thing that you're putting forward to your audience, it will come across lukewarm at best. You won't be very encouraging, very credible, very believable. There'll be something in people's intuition where they won't quite be persuaded because you're not persuaded. You have to be sold yourself. When you're persuading, you need all three wheels on the tricycle. If you don't have all three wheels, you're gone. you're gone. It needs to be, just get back here, stop working, come on, work for me, you can do it, you can do it. There it is. You need all three wheels. One wheel goes, that tricycle goes nowhere. You will not be persuasive. You will not be influential. So if we look back at our little tricycle, what if you were persuading and you only had logos and pathos? If you only had logos and pathos, then you've got this. You've got a guy with great arguments and you've got a guy with great passion, but you don't trust him. So that's not going to work, is it? And then if you only had ethos and pathos, what do you get? Well, you get something that's just fluffy. Yeah, I trust that guy. I believe him. He's got a good character, and he seems to be passionate, but his argument just doesn't stack up. And you've got a weak link in the chain. It's just not going to work either. And what if you only had ethos and logos, and you didn't have pathos? Well, then of course you get this. You bore the pants off people. So you've got to have a bit of everything going on. As I said, you need to be completely sold on what you're putting forward. You need to be sold yourself before you can sell other people. And from experience, if you're not sold yourself, you need to dig. You need to dig in and figure out what are the bits that are troubling you. What aren't you quite convinced about? Why? And do some digging about that. And when I first was a copywriter, I became a copywriter over donkeys years ago. And one of my first clients was a big bank. And I got this great gig, and it was writing direct mail letters, and I was an awesome direct mail letter writer, I thought. And then my heart sank when I learnt what I'd be writing direct mail letters to their customer database about: insurance. And to a young guy, I couldn't think of anything more boring than insurance. And I learnt that actually what I had to do was dig in and dig and find out what about insurance is interesting. And the more you dig, the more stuff becomes interesting. And then you become passionate about it, and you go, man, people really need insurance. They're in dire straits. People's lives have been ruined because they didn't have insurance. So, digging for the gold is critical to making sure that you get on board yourself. And in the process of digging, you often dig out great arguments, great facts that, man, that's a brilliant statistic. I'll have to chuck that at them. And, it helps to convince them as well. So emotions move us. I'm not saying go full on I used to run a networking group in Sydney called the Last Thursday Club, and this guy, we became quite big, and this guy, we had a featured business every month, and he sent me his little spiel for his featured business, and he said, and I said, just tell me what you'd like me to, put forward to the database about the featured business, and he said, and it was about mobile advertising, and he wrote, what he wanted me to write to them was, mobile is so frickin' exciting. It's so exciting, it makes me want to explode. And I thought, well, that's probably great passion, great pathos, but, probably need to tone that down a little bit there. So, let's go back to our tricycle. Ethos, pathos, logos. You need all three. Let's talk about this one, this guy, logos. One of the most critical things, of course, it's one of the biggest ones with your presentation. And I want to give you a few frameworks to consider. A few high-level frameworks to consider for your presentation. We've only got an hour, so we don't have a great deal of time to be able to go in detail about this. But just to give you a high-level idea of some presentation sort of frameworks. And like I said, this isn't just about presentations, but it's also for your documents that you might be writing or emails. High-level sort of things to consider. The first one, 3 levels to it. And it's a nice one, easy one to remember. It's problem, promise, path. Problem, promise, path. You talk about the problem that your reader has or your listener has. You outline that. You're building some rapport with them by getting in sync with how they're feeling about this problem. Emotions move us. And then you're giving them some sort of solution, the promise. And then you say how we can achieve that, how we can actually get to that promise. Problem, promise, path. If you really want to make it very simple, you could just go problem, solution. That's a very basic way of looking at how you persuade people, problem and then solution. But a few extra little nuances of meaning can often help to bring it a bit more to life. So here's another little framework This problem promise path, very quite general, very useful in a variety of scenarios. Another one to consider has 4 steps. This is from David Maister's Trusted Advisor, and a similar sort of a thing is used by, I've learned, the McKinsey's. If I just show you, hang on a sec, get my camera going again. Where are you? There you are. Okay, so hopefully you can see me again. And there's a great book called Persuading Aristotle by Peter Thompson. As you can see, I've got a few bookmarks in that. And the thing that I really, one of the things that he says in that, he talks about how McKinsey's used this as a little model. Their version is, he says, situation. God damn it, I can't remember it. Luckily, I've got it bookmarked. It's situation, complication, what is the problem that we're facing here, and the question, what is the question that this brings up, and then what's the answer. Situation, complication, question, answer. I kind of like this one as well. Position, problem, possibilities, proposal. Another P thing. Wow, that's memorable. So the position is the context. What's going on right now? And talking about this here, it's a great way of actually building empathy with your audience by getting in sync with any pain that your readers might be experiencing. So talking about that, it's a good opportunity to build rapport with them. You want to mention and connect with your audience's goals, KPIs, fears, hopes when you're talking about this current position or situation or problem. If you had a presentation to management in which you're suggesting they approve a new computer system, you might have some slides about how the current computer system is stopping these managers from achieving their goals or their KPIs. So you're trying to build some rapport, get them on board with why this is relevant, why they should care. And then you talk about the problem, what question that makes come up, and then the possibilities, what are the alternatives. And if you're recommending just one alternative and you've got a critical discriminating audience, this is from our Write for Influence persuasive writing course, we talk about persuading by attitude. And when you've got a critical discriminating audience, it's good to give them alternatives and then say why those are bad, but this particular one is the one you recommend, because it shows you've done your homework. But if you've got an apathetic audience, someone who's not really, that tuned in, they don't really care that much, maybe you're talking to staff about chair ergonomics or something, then don't say there are 3 other, here's the chair ergonomics theory from Russia, here's the one from China, no, just stick to the one that you're recommending, because people that have low levels of interest, so they have low tolerance for you presenting many alternatives. And then, of course, you've got your proposal, your solutions that you're recommending at the end. Okay. Come on, slides. You can do it. All right. So, yep, great opportunity there to show empathy, to build rapport with your audience. A final framework I want to give you is more sales-oriented. So this particular one I've just shown you, very good for, say, reporting, presenting, results at work or a proposal to your boss. When you're selling, because some people listening in today are salespeople, they're making presentations to try to get sales over the line. So here is a 6-step one that's more about sales. And in fact, if you've done our training, and I know there's a lot of people who've done our training on the course, on the webinar today, then you will know about this 6-step model. So it's a good reminder for you. The 6 steps are, and it's a flexible model, but I found it really quite useful. Attention, problem solution, credibility. I won't read the rest to you because you can read yourself. So you get attention by, with your headline, with your slides, with your graphics, and especially with you talking about your needs, your problems or the needs of your audience. And then you talk about specifically the problem and the solution. In fact, here's a big problem we've got, and what's your answer to it? Then the next likely reaction your reader might have is, why should I believe you and what you're saying is true? And then you build some credibility around you if they don't know you, your background, years of experience or whatever, and maybe how well researched you've put, how much research you've put in behind this to build the credibility of your case. Now that you have got attention, got them listening, and then talked about problem solution, satisfied credibility, now you build desire. FBI from our courses, features or facts, benefits, implications. Why should they care about that? Step number 4. And talking about the next step. I'll actually be talking about FBI before we leave the webinar today. Then you go low-risk offer, thinking about why your reader, easy ways for your reader to say yes. You want to implement a $2 million computer system. Well, just say, let's trial it with just this pod of 10 people over there. It's easy to say yes to that. So it's, more people will say yes to it. And then you want to ask for the action at the end. Make your action clear, easy to understand, and easy to act on. All right, one thing that's often missing in persuasive presentations is credibility, boosting credibility. So one thing that is very important for boosting cred is the concept of specifics sell. For credibility, count. Count the stuff up. Whatever it is that you're talking about, don't just give generalities. Give specifics when you can. And a simple example of that would be this. This is actually from like a normal document, not a PowerPoint presentation, but the principle you would apply through a PowerPoint. You're talking about XYZ delivering significant cost savings to free up the cash flow. Give some sort of specific there. How much will it save them per year? Some sort of specific to make it really relevant to them. Some final ideas about credibility. Can you include a case study? A case study is like a story, so on a PowerPoint presentation that can work quite well. Can you include a testimonial? You might even just mention that without even putting it in the slides. I was talking to Frank at NAB who said X. Prestigious clients, length of experience. All of these things you can play with and see which ones are most useful to you to build some cred. By the way, to save you taking notes, when I'm in webinars, sometimes I'll just take a screenshot of certain screens that I want to remember. So, you wouldn't have to write all that down, just take a screenshot. If you're on an iPad, take a screenshot or your computer. Okay, lastly, my friends, let's get into response. How do you actually get people's response? The first thing is, and I probably should have covered this right at the start, but it seemed to fit better here in this particular CPR structure, and that is to know your audience. To know your audience. Aristotle, this guru of persuasion, of argument, said, "The fool tells me his reasons, the wise man persuades me with my own." The wise man persuades me with my own. You need to get inside your reader's head to figure out what their reasons are, what their objections are, how they see the world, what are their values, attitudes, and beliefs. Values, attitudes, and beliefs to this topic, to you, to even to PowerPoint presentations, and try and break through that if that is possible. You want to stand in your reader's shoes. Stand in your reader's shoes. See the world the way they see it. If you were them, why would you care? Why would you even want to listen to this PowerPoint presentation? What's in it for them? If you're talking to managers, make sure you're not making your presentation all about, the lower level operational things, where your managers might be interested in the higher level things, governance, strategy, marketing, public perception. Make sure you're talking about things through their lens, not just yours. In terms of getting response, bring your numbers to life. Very often I'll see people making a presentation and they've got a big number there. Well, that's great, but can you compare that to anything else to make it come more to life? And of course, when you're doing PowerPoint, one of the great, advantages, huge advantage, is that you've got pictures there. People are ready and waiting and wanting pictures. A number presented as a picture is far more engaging. This, for example, is a penny. Now, if I was to ask you how big a pile 1,000,000 pennies would be, not $1 million, but 1,000,000 pennies, in the courses when I ask this, people say all sorts of things. And they go, it's only knee high, or it's maybe, 3 stories high. They think it's huge. But this is what 1,000,000 pennies looks like. It's not really that big. And then if I ask what a billion pennies would look like, well, usually people overestimate 1,000,000 and they underestimate 1 billion. That's what 1 billion looks like. And then if I said, what does 1 trillion look like? 1,000 of those. And people have no idea generally then, and that's what 1 trillion looks like. Here's our little guy. So it's just showing you that we can't get our head around these big numbers. And so bringing them to life for your readers is a very smart thing to do. And just to encourage you with how smart you are, did you know that in your head you have 300 trillion synapses? These are the connections between your neurons. So, you're pretty smart. Maybe you're smarter than you look. Just kidding. All right. So here's a great example. This is from Shell, and on their website they talk about their floating liquid natural gas petroleum tanker, and these are the ways they bring their numbers to life. So it's a nice way of making those numbers more relevant, more interesting, more engaging. Okay, further to this idea of bringing numbers to life is this concept of using great graphics. Helps you get better response. So with great graphics, this is a nice example. I was when I was living in Sydney, I went to the Lane Cove, it was a children's market on, and I had little babies at that stage, and this guy was a photographer, and he was promoting his photography services for kids. I don't know about you, but I just reckon that there are more attractive kids than that. And I said, how's business? And he said, oh, not so good, not very busy. He was really trying to get his business going. For God's sake, you as an attractive kid. To the parents of that kid, of course, that little girl is beautiful, gorgeous. But, on that guy's website, he also had this. I put it to you that kid's a little bit, a bit cuter. I'd be using the cuter kid. So use great graphics or don't use any graphics at all. To get your graphics, you have to be aware of copyright issues, of course. This is Creative Commons, the search functionality on Creative Commons, and that's the link to it there, search.creativecommons.org. And you can often get a lot of free ones there. You can use it accesses Flickr, Photopedia, Google Images, all images that you can use for commercial use. And at the top you can see there that you can modify or adapt or whatever, and there's certain different licenses for them. And when we can't find something on there, we'll often use 123rf.com as well. They're reasonably priced images. If you are presenting graphs, quantitative information, you cannot go past this guy. He hasn't exactly got the most attractive, in my opinion, cover for his book, but he has a PhD in this stuff, and his content is gold. If you Google him, you find lots of stuff available on him, and he really, really has some brilliant examples of how to present information in a really engaging, captivating way. Edward Tuft, or Tufty, I'm not sure. Okay, so response, lastly, make sure you motivate your audiences. And one of the key motivators, Aristotle, our buddy, from 2,500 years ago, and he talked about rhetorical proofs. These are ways of convincing your audience of your points in your arguments. The rhetorical proofs, he said, there were 4, and he ranked them to say which were the most powerful, and going down the line, which were the weakest. Sometimes we find ourselves habitually using the weaker ones when we should be chunking it up into the most powerful ones. The 4 of them are consequences. If I tell you the consequences of doing something or not doing something, it's a very powerful way of motivating you. The next one down, that's slightly weaker, is example. And that might be telling you about how someone else did something or didn't do something and what happened to them. That's not as engaging as motivating as when I tell it that might happen to you. But sometimes you do it on purpose because the thing that you're asking might just be too in their face, and you need to soften it a little bit. And then you've got authority, which is basically do it because I said so, or do it because I'm an expert. And then you've got definition, which is getting really nitty-gritty about the definition of words, and maybe you've got a certain value in your business about being green, and you might say, well, we're a green company, so we should be doing this. So that would be getting into the definition. So quite weak compared to talking about consequences. In our courses, we talk about motivating your readers not through consequence, but what we call FBI, which is features, benefits, implications. Features, benefits, implications, and a feature is what it does. Another word for feature is facts. What are the facts? And then there's benefits, and then there's implications. And the way you get from one to the other is ask, so what? Why should your reader care about each one of those? What it does is make your content relevant and make it more interesting. If you were trying to convince your boss to move your office into the city, if you weren't in the city, that would be a feature or fact. But if your boss said, so what, then a benefit of that might be to say, well, you get easy access to clients. And if your boss said, so what to that, You could say, well, we'll have better, client relationships, and that will obviously have to lead to, more sales. The implications are quite powerful. Marketers use this all the time. Quicken Software came out with software that helps you get through your accounting work faster, and they talked about the implications. You get to get home to your kids and, and read to them and spend some time with them instead of being stuck at work. Implications. BHP have an implications-based ad for their staff to try to get them to be safer at work. It's worth remembering when you're writing implications that there are two major human motivators. Two major human motivators. I wonder if you know what they are. I'm going to run a little poll and see if you can guess what the two major human motivators are. Here we go. Just vote on that, please. What are the two major human motivators? Half of you have voted. Come on, ping that button. Okay, and we'll close the poll. And we've got, very interesting, I'll share that with you. 43% thought fear and greed, 32% gain and pain, 11% food and sex. So, very interesting. Guess which one won? The bottom one. It's gain and pain. Okay, so let me just show you that one. And it's gain and pain. Avoid a pain and make a gain. At a very basic level, all motivators can be boiled down into that, and different audiences are tuned into different things. The public, for example, 60% of the public are naturally tuned into pain, but if you're writing to senior people, CEOs, etc., then 90% of them are tuned into making a gain. So you're once again tailoring how you make these, put these implications across. So to show you how you might tie them in together, this is an Electrolux Trilobite, a robotic vacuum cleaner. The feature or fact is it's a robot. You tie it in with the word language like so, it vacuums by itself, which means you'll come home from work to see clean floors. It's an implication. It's a great way of motivating people. And if you don't have the money for a Trilobite, you could go for the model just under that, which is this friendly little fella. And my friends, guess what? We are there. That's almost the end of our CPR, our presentation. Don't go just yet. I've got a couple of other things for you. For example, make sure you read these. 3 great books on presenting. Resonate by Nancy Duarte. The HBR Guide to Persuasive Presentations, which is excellent, also written by Nancy. And Presentation Zen by Gar Reynolds. Some excellent books, highly esteemed out there. What next for you? Remember that an ounce of action is worth a ton of theory. It's worth a ton of theory. So make sure, at the very least, when you leave here, you apply. You try to get this stuff and be using it straight away, because otherwise you'll forget it. And especially share. Telling other people some of what you've learned is a great way of remembering it. Get out there, share the love with your readers. Remember that bad writing kills business, and because of that, you want to be continuing to learn. So some other opportunities for you to learn. Sign up if you haven't yet to our Influencing Up webinar. Getting buy-in from senior decision makers, some great psychology in there, to pitching on paper, how to really boost your proposal hit rates. If you are even keener than that, you might consider our 2 courses, Get It Right, our professional writing masterclass, and Write for Influence, which is all about advanced persuasive writing. And in fact, we have a 2-for-1 deal going now that until Valentine's Day, you can get 2 tickets for the price of 1. Just book one, and then the other person can book and not pay, and just shoot us an email and we'll mark that one as paid for you. You will find these on our website on the events page. The website's magneto.net.au. And after the seminar, we'll send you a feedback sheet and link. Go to training, we'll send that to you. So I'd really love if you would just give us some quick feedback. It's only very, very brief, but just to give us an idea about what you thought. If you would have liked anything different, maybe spending more time on some of the content and not more, more of the overview like I've done on some of it. If you do have any questions, then that's my email address, paul@magneto.net.au. And team, we're there. Well done. Thank you very much for your company today. Adios. Hope you enjoyed it.